welcome to the Frontier Partner event for this early evening. We were really pleased to be asked by Defra to help host this session. And for the next 3/4 of an hour or so, you've got the pleasure of me. I'm a sustainable farming advisor for Kings. There's some familiar faces in the room. I've been around the block a bit. I used to work for FWAG. I used to work at the Allerton Project, and then I turned to the dark side and sell things. But I've actually got 23 years of experience of delivering agri-environment schemes and been sat on Defra committees with various different people. So rather sadly, I can pick up rules and understand how a scheme works. We're joined by Jonathan Baker, who is a Deputy Director at Defra. And for his sins, he looks after the development of elms and these types of schemes. So the way we're going to run this session is Jonathan's the man with no slides and knows everything, and he's going to stand up for 10 or 15 minutes. We can take questions as we run through, but please bear in mind we've planned this so we get a good 25 minutes at the end for a proper Q&A. So we might turn around and say, can you leave that till the end? And then you've got me with some slides because I need to remember what I'm saying. Just giving you a run through of a practical approach to elms and SFI and how we can hopefully make it work on farm. So that's a run through of what we're going to do. I'll hand over to Jonathan and I'll be back in about 10, 12 minutes.
Thanks, Jim. Afternoon all. You've had a long day of listening to lots of people say lots of very interesting things, so I hope I can at least keep somewhere close to the quality of speakers you've had so far today. So as Jim set out, I'm one of the senior civil servants in Defra. I'm responsible for our overall transition plan, as well as making sure we go out and learn from and talk to farmers across the country. So I'm going to set out a number of things. So a restatement of what we're trying to achieve through these farming reforms. What's our plan to achieve it in headline way, in a high-level way? How do things look from our perspective in Defra? How are we seeing things and thinking things through? And then much of the time focusing on the recent announcements. So what have we done to help deliver this plan? And what have we announced today to help us do more across the following year? So on the first question, so what are we looking to achieve? Firstly, we're looking to maintain food production. We're looking to improve and restore the natural environment, reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and increase productivity so we can create a self-reliant and subsidy-free sector. Fairly easy to say, very challenging to do, but that's what we're here to achieve. So what's our plan to achieve them? There are three big things that we can set out, which will form the basis of the rest of the discussion. The first of which is around investing in innovation and productivity, offering grants, more innovation for research and development, farmer-led innovation across the country, and providing support for the sector to adapt and transition, for example, seed funding for the Institute for Agriculture and Horticulture. We also need, the second thing is to get scale. So to deliver our challenging environmental targets, we need very large-scale adoption of environmental land management. Our approach to achieving that is that we will remove the things that stop farmers making those changes, stop them applying for our schemes, stop them making environmental land management on their farms. That means stuff like simpler services, we treat farmers fairly, there's something for all farmers, and we make sure our schemes fit within a farm business, or else why would a farmer take them forward? So we need at least 70% of farmers to be in our schemes by 2028, and that's the easy part. We need them to be delivering our targets as well. What that will mean is that farmers who are already in schemes will need to be doing more than they are doing now, and that farmers not in schemes, the vast majority of them will need to be in schemes doing environmental land management at that time period. The third thing is we are supporting ambition. Uptake is necessary, but it's not sufficient. We know many farmers want to do more. We did a recent survey of farmers in countryside stewardship, and about 2/3 of them said, given the opportunity, they would like to do more. About half the farmers applying for SFI are already in countryside stewardship, so there's clearly demand for farmers already in schemes to do more. We need to unlock that and help allow those farmers to be able to realise those ambitions for doing more. So we can support and encourage ambition, and I'll flesh that out a little bit more in a minute. I said I'd set out how things look like from a Defra perspective, and it's easy in the kind of blizzard of announcements to actually not reflect on kind of where we are, or think that nothing's really changed from perhaps when you were here in 2020. So from a Defra perspective, we are now in the 4th year, just about, of the agricultural transition, something which was started in 2018 and had its genesis in 2016. We've got all of our schemes now running. Countryside stewardship, SFI, landscape recovery, we've done at least one round, one iteration of all of those schemes. We're now delivering, or farmers are delivering through those schemes. Even last year, we saw more farmers apply for countryside stewardship than the previous year. We've got far more farmers in that scheme at the moment, up to around 35,000 farmers in countryside stewardship. We're getting over 100 farmers a day apply for SFI every single day. That's within since they opened the scheme in September or October, 1 in 10 farmers who could apply for it have applied. And we've got about half of all BPS recipients now in the scheme of some sort, countryside stewardship or SFI. We've got over 50 landscape recovery projects live, and we've also spent hundreds of millions of pounds on grants, which allowed thousands of farmers to change their business, respond to these changes, become more productive. And we provided free business advice to over 10,000 farmers. So the changes on the ground, we're making these changes at the moment. Now, there is a lot more to do, and we need to do more, we recognise that. And that's what the announcement were about today and the publication we put out. So within those three themes, productivity and innovation, scale and ambition, what have we set out today and what have we done to date? So over the last few years, as I said, we've provided thousands of grants available that farmers have taken up. We've met demand where we've seen it, where more farmers are like, yes, I want to get in and invest in my slurry infrastructure. We've helped them do that. Looking forward, we're going to provide even more funding for kit and infrastructure. Today we set out, because farmers have told us, we want to know what grants are coming. It's no good when they pop up. We need to plan for them. So we set out today what our plan is for grants across the rest of this year. That looks like more funding for animal housing across 3 different breeds. For the first time, offering solar panels as part of that, because farmers have told us that really helps increase their kind of interest in making some of those changes. A further round on slurry management, more on water resources, adding value so you guys can add more value to your products and get a better position in the supply chain, as well as carrying on the innovation and the productivity, equipment and funding. And we're also, as the Secretary said, set out, interested in innovation, but getting things done on the field, and that's why we announced the £15 million fund, which is around helping farmers deliver innovation on their ground now, not in 15 years. The next 2 areas is around scale. So we set out today that we're going to update prices as we have done the last couple of years. Markets have been rising. We've responded to farmer feedback to make sure our schemes are attractive. And again, for the 3rd time, we've done that for all agreements, not just new ones, existing agreements, so that farmers who've already making the changes aren't being disadvantaged and they're benefiting to make these changes. Last year, we acted on uplands. We got feedback that there were separate prices for upland farmers and lowland farmers. That didn't feel fair. Upland farmers felt it was inappropriate. So we acted and we changed that. This year, we've changed how we balance the prices between creation and maintenance. Farmers are telling us that they've built this habitat, they've invested in it, but the prices just don't make it attractive. And that was stopping them creating more and making them feel like they were hard done by. So we've looked at that, we've looked at the evidence, and we've reset those prices so they're much more attractive, some of them 3 times higher, reflecting what it actually costs to maintain these crucial habitats. So listening and taking on board the feedback that's stopping farmers applying for our schemes. In SFI, we've already built a lot of flexibility around how that scheme's delivered, and Jim will touch on some of that in a minute. It's an opportunity, and it's about removing barriers to farmers. We've also created quarterly payments to help with cash flow, a rolling application window so farmers can apply when they want rather than when we tell them to. We've introduced for the first time the management payment, whereby we cover the costs of delivering an agreement, not just the individual aspects of the work. And we targeted that to help smaller farmers who we know have been disincentivised from applying for our schemes. So we've removed that barrier to farmers applying. And we've seen between introducing the management payment, we saw twice as many smaller farms apply for our scheme. So it is working. We've also provided free choice so that farmers can choose the options that work for them. We're creating a toolkit that farmers can choose from. They can choose the actions that work best on their farm. Again, we're not telling farmers what to do, but removing the barriers to farmers engaging in our schemes. So what are we going to do next? This summer, we're going to bring together SFI and countryside stewardship into one application process, removing another barrier so farmers can get the best of both worlds. The simpler administration of SFI that I touched on there, but the breadth, the scale and the ambition of countryside stewardship, but with less paperwork in one area. And we're also going further around tenant farmers in particular. We already made some changes, so tenants don't need to ask a landlord permission. If they lose control over the land and it's not their fault through their agreement, then we don't penalise them. We're going further, and we said that we're now going to do some more actions over 3-year time periods rather than 5, because the sector had told us it's much more likely as a tenant that I can manage that land over 3 years. So where that works for the environment, we're offering 3-year actions rather than 5 years. So that's what we're doing on scale, some of the things that we're doing on scale. So on ambition, what are we doing? So we've already increased the number of offers that were available when we expanded the SFI offer at the end of last year, from up to 23. I think it was originally proposed to be 9 because we understood the impatience from farmers to do more. Today, we said that we're going to offer a further 50 options that will be available this summer. And these are options which some of the best farmers, or we've taken ideas from the best farmers. What are they doing at the moment? What can we bring into our schemes that help them do what they want to do? Stuff like agroforestry, precision farming, some of the best ideas out there, polariculture, bringing those ideas into our schemes so those innovative farmers get paid and more farmers do them. Making sure that it's something for all farmers, and also recognising that's quite a wide offer. We're looking to make sure that we can design our system so it's much easier for customers to find what they need to find. So if you're a dairy farmer or you're in Dartmoor, you don't need to scroll through 6 pages of coastal erosion options. We're going to make it much easier for customers to understand what options are relevant to them. We've also, for the first time, are increasing the prices for about 26 high priority actions. So these are actions that are extremely valuable for the environment and achieving our targets. At the moment, we don't get the level of uptake that we need. So we're increasing those prices even further, offering a premium, because we know farmers want to take those measures, but if it doesn't make sense for their business, then why would they do it? So we need to increase the prices for those options. And again, for the first time, we're incentivizing farmers to do more. So Jim will talk about the scale of delivery. We want to incentivize farmers where they go a certain set of options at a certain scale. It's much more effective for nature. So we don't want to restrict your choice, but we want to incentivize you to make those changes. And we're going to introduce that as a premium for the first time. We let more farmers into higher tier at the moment. The Countryside Stewardship Higher Tier, our scheme for more complex, tailored change. We saw more farmers into that this year. We set ourselves a target that we will double the number of farmers per year we let into higher tier in the next 2 years, because we're going to make some significant administration improvements and work with all of our delivery partners so we can get more of those farmers into higher tier, because we know there is lots of demand for farmers to do that. So again, we need to remove the barriers to farmers realising their ambitions. I've touched on the fact we are over 50 landscape recovery projects. We're committed to carrying on with further rounds of landscape recovery. We're seeing a really good mix of farmers involved in those projects, including tenants. We're carrying on that project. And we'll also, for the first time, see some of those projects who are now finishing their project development phase and moving into project implementation. We start to see some of those things make a real difference on the ground. And then finally, we'll be offering more advice and support. So there's a lot of choice out there. We've created a very comprehensive toolkit for farmers, and we need to help farmers make the best use of it. So we're carrying on with the facilitation fund, where you can access free advice from a trusted advisor about how you can work with local neighbours to join up your options and make them work really well. We're also, for the first time, going to be offering what we call a sustainable farming advice offer, whereby you can access free advice, again, from a trusted provider to tell you how can you get the most out of environmental land management schemes, what's going to work best for you, how can you access carbon, and we'll pay you to access stuff like carbon audits and natural capital assessments. So use those tools with an advisor to work out, okay, what can I do on my farm? Solving a big challenge that farmers have told us. So that's a kind of whistle-stop tour over the document and the changes that we're making and how we see things at the moment. It's not perfect, it's never going to be perfect, but we're committed, as I hopefully I've set out, where farmers and you guys can articulate, here's something which is making it harder for farmers to do these things. We will act on it, we will respond, and we'll hopefully make that change. Jim, do you want to pick up on the...
Thanks, Jonathan. So I'm going to run through our approach at Frontier and my approach, if you like. So this is going to focus primarily on arable, a bit of mixed farming and lowland, because that's the bit I understand. And I'm going to talk you through how I would approach it and some of the options and actions that those of you in the room who are advisors can actually help farmers, because that's critical. Not many people want to read a 200-page document to shift out what's there, but you need to, because you need to understand what you've got to deliver, and that's our role in the advisory community, is to help farmers open that door to understand things. So I'm going to start and finish with a few bits about what does the environment need. None of this is super clever. It's stuff that's been around for a long, long time. So if we're to have a really effective, flourishing farmed environment, wildlife, clean water, carbon, all the stuff that goes with food production, if we had between 3 and 5% of lowland England in well-managed options and schemes, we would see a different countryside. This is not about turning into park keepers, rewilding farms. It's about being sensible, providing connectivity, and doing what is really well 30, 40 plus years of research. It's not about something new and clever. I'm not going to go through all of those because I could waffle and witter about every single one of those points for at least 5 minutes. But the key thing is we need profitable farm businesses. You might wonder why on earth a Frontier, someone from Frontier stood at the front talking about this and talking about 3 to 5% of land managed differently. As a company, as many of you in the room work as consultants and with supply chain companies, we need profitable farming businesses. We can't survive without it. They're core and key to what we do. So it's really important that we give good, valuable, thought-through professional advice to help people make it work. So what are the positives about ELMS? I've used one wrong word there. I think it's actually easy to apply for. It would be better to say it's straightforward. There are niggles. I'm not going to hide from the niggles. I've found loads. Jonathan's had a phone call a week from me going, what the flipping heck? But once you've decided what you're going to do, form filling is straightforward. A farmer can do it themselves if they're of a mind. Not many are, and need help. But it's not difficult. It's really flexible. There's some things Jonathan skimmed over, but we need to recognise how flexible this is. You can do something in year 1 and commit to do 100 units of it. And in year 2, it's a rotational option, you can just deliver 50 units because your rotation's changed. Or you can deliver 200 because you've got on really well with it. We've never had that annual flexibility before, and that's really good. We haven't got a great big list of you've got to do this by the 15th of June. We've got you've got to make this deliver seed during these months. It's much, much better than it was, and it's flexible. The payment rates are quarterly. I helped somebody apply in November. I was astounded. They got a 1st of December start date. They rang me when I was on my sick bed with a cold before Christmas to tell me they got their first payment. It's different, and we need to get used to it. It's not perfect, but it's different. And the schemes can integrate environment and good farm productive farming. If it hasn't got productive farming, it doesn't work, and it can work on most farms. It won't suit every farmer in this room, it won't suit every supply chain in this room, but it will work for 90% of people. The next bit aimed at farmers, but for those of you in the room who don't farm, your consultancy or you work with farmers who are in the supply chain, we can help. Planning is critical. Now, understanding what you've got on the farm. I'm not going to warble on about this forever, but it's understanding where the important habitats are. Have you got a site of special scientific interest? Have you got an important grassland field that really is important? Have you got important species? Most farmers know. Sometimes they're a bit frightened sticking their hand up and saying they have. But as advisors, we need to help ensure that they do know and understand its value. And let's talk production. Not everybody yield maps in an arable situation. Everybody thinks everybody does, but they don't. You can use lots of tools. This is our tool, this is biomass imagery. We've slid the line across on the bar at the bottom to show stuff in May. We have a very high biomass image, that's the green and the yellow, and that transfers really well into good productivity. And you can go and look at these images for 5 years back, and you can start to properly identify areas you need to take out of production and do something differently. I'm not going to tell this guy to take the middle of this field then, because he'll tell me it's his best field, but evidence says it's not. I'm going to help him get the middle of his field right, but I want him to take the edges out, or her. We need that to happen. That's part of that 3 to 5%. When you've done that, it's about looking at the margins and the edges first. I started doing this work about 25 years ago now, and I was told then, don't talk to people about squaring fields up anymore, Jim, everyone's already done it. Farmers in the room, who squared all their fields up and taken all the scoops, gorings and awkward bits out? Put your hands up. Rest my case. You haven't done it. I get quite passionate about it. It's critical. You're losing money on that land. You're putting inputs in places that are inappropriate. It is not producing food. It's pulling down your yields. Sit down and be honest and map those areas. Don't go and look for today's announcement of £835 a hectare for winter bird food, because that might be the wrong option. But map the areas where that option might go. Think about unnecessary overlaps. The number of tram lines I see that don't match the width of the sprayer. Come on, take it down. Put that last 5 metres into the scheme. It will make your life quicker and easier. Protect the water courses. You've got to do it by regulation. We've heard all this stuff this morning, the great stuff about improving water quality and what we need to do. Put the buffer in. It's unproductive land anyway. And use buffer strips to help with management. Take them out. Cut the hedges in the right way. None of this is difficult. And if you've done this properly, on most farms in this country, you'll find between 3 and 7% of land that you can put options on. Once you've mapped it and you've found it, and if you're a big farming business, you talk to the operator. Not what you think works, what the man on the machine says works. Where they get stuck, where they spend 20 minutes and don't tell you where they've been. Where you have to fold the sprayer bins back in again. Map it and make sure you use it properly. You end up making more money out of it. It's about being profitable. And when you've done that bit, that's where you put your winter bird food, your buffer strips, your pollen and nectar strips, but make sure you put the right thing in the right place. You don't put those flower-rich grass margins underneath the north-facing woodland. Because you'll only come back to me and my colleague Mr. Barnes and say we sold you rubbish seed because it's in the wrong place. That's where you need to put your grass margin. You'll make more profit out of the grass margin being there because the seed costs less. The establishment's easier. And then start to look in the middle of the field. And my 4 on there are the ones that we knew about before today. I've not included the £77 for minimum cultivation. I've not included the summer fallow option that's appeared today. It's fantastic stuff that's out there that we can make work in farm businesses. So, do you spring crop? Lots of people do. And I'm not talking about this year. I'm not going to get into the issues around this year because it's horrible when you drive down to Nottinghamshire today. But if you spring crop, cover crop. It improves your soil. A good cover crop will save you over 70 kilos of nitrogen sucked up from the soil available for your next crop. It can improve soil health, improve organic matter. It will do your job. Get paid for it. It will do more than cover your seed and establishment costs. Put a legume fallow in. That field I showed you before, it might benefit from 2 years of legume fallow. Soil improved. They're paying you to have a break that's reliable, that's going to improve your farm in the long term. If the legume fallow doesn't work for you, you might want to do a herbal lay. You've been paid to grow a forage crop. You don't have to any longer just do ryegrass. When people get into herbal lays, they're more productive than ryegrass. They cost less, they're cheaper to run. Make the system work in the middle of the field. Companion crop, it's not just about oilseed rapeseed. It's about the opportunity to experiment. Start to put living mulches in the ground. Start to put clovers in with a wheat. It might not work on Richard's farm, it might work on Jonathan's, it might not work on mine. But put 10 hectares worth in. You're not going to lose anything. And at the end of year 1, when you find out whether it's worked or not, you can make that 100. You've got that flexibility. It's about trying it on your own farm and understanding where it works. So these are the options that can work within your rotation and production. And in that 50, there's a whole heap more than those ones I've covered today. I'm not going to try and remember what's just been announced. But make the options work for the farm business. It's really, really, really important. I'm not going to go through all of this one. I can get very passionate about this one, but make sure you understand the rules. My job as an advisor is not to go and tell Jonathan what to do on his farm. My job is not to assume Jonathan understands the rules. My job is to get him to understand which actions I think work best for him and give him the rules to read. I always do that. Because the farm will understand whether they work or not. I won't. And I'd be really stupid to think I did know whether they work or not. And then they can decide exactly what goes where. We haven't got dates, we've got aims, we've got actions when we can do them, where to do them and how to do them, and evidence to keep. It really is simple. And it fits on 2 sides of A4, and none of you will do more than 10. It's not difficult. But please, in my job, in our job as advisors, I hear so many people wanting to bend and break the rules. Stick with them. They are sensible. If it doesn't work for your farm, don't do the option. Because if you do bend and break them, we won't maintain the flexibility we've got now, which is brilliant. Once you've done all the planning, put your plan into action. Think it through. I'll come back to that 3 to 7% and integrate it with farming. Make Elms work for you, because it can. It can support your farm business. We're just in a different world. Come back to evidence, and I've got a couple more slides to finish. So this piece of research was led by Richard Pylewell at the Centre for Ecology and Hydrology, and it's my favourite bit of research ever. It was published in 2015, and it actually demonstrates really well. They've got a 1,000-hectare farm unit at Hillsden, and they did a 6-year experiment. It was based around the old ELS, so very similar measures to those that sit in SFI. And they removed between 3 and 8% on different blocks of land, and they put in pollen and nectar, wildflower, winter bird food, grass margins. And they saw no net loss of yield. Now you transfer that back round, you take that 3 to 7% out on most farms, not all, and you won't notice you've done it, because you're taking out the land that's difficult. Not calling it uneconomic and unproductive, it's difficult. And you'll know no net loss, and then you bring in the income from the scheme. And if you pick the right options, and that doesn't mean winter bird food, which is the highest paying one in every corner, because it's expensive to deliver. But if you pick the right one with the right margin, you'll start to have sustainable intensification. You'll actually make more money than you did in the first place. And that piece of research demonstrated that really well. So last couple from me. If you do go into the scheme as a farmer, or if you're an advisor helping somebody, please make sure we deliver it well. Don't let it be the scruffy corner that's left, but actually you're not bothered, because then the scheme will not succeed. If you put your cover crop in, plan to put it in the first week in September at the latest. Don't plan to put it in after spring wheat, in the middle of September, because it'll rain, and it'll rain, and it'll rain, and you won't get on and do it, and you'll put it in the third week in October, and it won't grow. Put it in properly, you'll save nutrients, you'll improve your soil health. You can graze it, but don't graze it like you're grazing stubble turnips. Graze it so it stays green. Put wildflower margins in the right place, the general public will love you. But you'll have loads of beneficials, you'll start to contribute towards your IPM plan. You'll change how you farm. Use winter bird food in the right place to support the right things. It can work. But when you do it, put fertiliser on it, please. Don't leave it with no fertiliser. You wouldn't grow a wheat crop without, well, some people do, but you wouldn't grow it without some form of nutrition. The same applies to these things, but that's about picking the right place, the right option in the right place. And then finally, the bit that I do when I worked at the Algae Project, I had some very interesting conversations with my former colleague, Mr. Philip Jarvis. I'm not doing evidence, Jim, they want photographs of everything. And he got that across one evening, he went out on a quad bike and he came back an hour later, proud as punch. Look at all these wonderful pictures I've got around the farm, I've taken a picture of every one. It took him an hour. That's all you've got to do is take a picture. My recommendation is don't keep it on your phone, because you'll forget where it is. Use one of these apps. This is some work I did back in November. The faded white bit in the corner, that's where I was stood in the field, geotagged, on my phone. I didn't take a notebook, I just took my phone. I made my notes, cover crop drilled on the 1st of September, I put the condition of the cover crop and I took 3 pictures. When I pressed save, it was on my laptop. That is all the evidence you need along with your seed receipt. Don't need anything else, it's not complicated. I hope what I'm getting across in a very short period of time is please think about this scheme. It does work. We need, as the industry, farmers to take it up. We need people to deliver it properly. It's not perfect like Jonathan said, but it's an awful lot better than what we've had. Thank you very much. So we're free for questions. We have got plenty of time. Jonathan and I aren't running off. I'm sure some of you will want a beer and an evening meal. But if you'd like to start with questions, we'll do our best to answer them. Tom.
Thank you. Can I just say, first of all, hats off to you and the team, Jonathan. I mean, it's a good scheme, it really is, and, and there's an awful lot of work you've put into it. But also, you've listened to the feedback and you've acted on it. So thank you. It's a really refreshing thing. And also, as someone who's been through the mill at RPA, the way we're treated now is a sea change, and it's great. My question is to do with how you're measuring success here. My nervousness is that there's now so much flexibility and everything that you built into it that you're going to come, 5 years down the line, and you'll have the National Audit Office breathing down your neck saying, hang on, you haven't delivered the government's targets here, and suddenly the kid gloves will come off again and will get badly treated for not delivering on the targets. So what are the measurements of success, and how can you be sure that's not going to happen?
This on? Yeah, so it's a great question. Thanks for the positive feedback. And I think particularly around the way we work with farmers, that Sandy and the team have done a really great job on that one. I think, how do you measure success? That's a very complicated answer to that one. The simplest, actually the National Audit Office are with us at the moment. I think they're due to report in the summer. So at a programme level, our big metrics of, are we delivering species recovery by 2030. So we have a set of very clear goals for our farming reforms of what we need to deliver and what other bits of government need to deliver. So we track those on a kind of 6th monthly basis for how we're tracking. So are we on track to deliver our outcomes? And the main way we do that is we generally speaking know how effective over 20 odd years or so individual agri-environment options, and we can work that back up to go how much of those options that we need. So we know, roughly speaking, how many options, how much hectarage of different options that we need in different areas, and we use that a headline metric to calculate overall programme success. Other measures for success are what's happening in the tenanted farm sector, what's happening in food security. So we have a range of those metrics that we actively manage and that we monitor. So we've got that. Then at a smaller scale, the individual action level that you've talked on, that's one whereby we have a new approach. It has some risk to it, whereby we are building flexibility. And Secretary of State said today, we trust farmers. We're trusting farmers, as Jim said, to bend but not break the rules and kind of not take the mick, so to speak. So the way that we're managing that, so we have a track of the emails that Jim and others send us about issues that they're seeing around like legume-rich fallows and how people are doing. We capture those. We sit down with the policy team, some of whom are here today in RPA, and go through and go, what's happening here? Have you heard this in other areas? Is this an issue? What do you need to do about it? And we're currently doing that at the moment. We've got 3 months or so of SFI data. We're seeing some issues that are coming through, and we're looking at that going, okay, do we need to act? So when we talk to the National Audit Office or our colleagues in Treasury or the rest of government or rest of my department, who I can assure you, I'm delivering a huge amount of, are delivering a huge amount of the rest of the department's goals. They come all the time and go, I'm the biodiversity team. How are we doing? There's a lot of challenge. We're able to go, well, we think our schemes are working. We're aware of these sorts of risks that farmers could do these sorts of things that mean they wouldn't work. Here's our assessment about what's happening in practice, and here's what we've done in response. So what that would look like in reality is that, say, some of those areas we see people take the mick and they're not delivering our schemes, we'd provide some updated guidance maybe. We'd work with Jim and other providers to say, by the way, guys, when we said this, we meant this, and here's how it works. And if we needed to, and it kept happening, we would change the rules. But that's very much a last port, because we want to trust farmers until it's really clear that we need to put some rules in place. We have a kind of rules last approach to making sure our schemes are effective.
Thank you, Jonathan. I'll just add to that one. It comes back to my slide about, as farmers in the room, please deliver it properly. Yeah. Because if we do, the evidence is there, it'll work. Gentleman in the front and then the gentleman at the back after, please. You had your hand. Gentleman here first.
Thank you very much, John Gallard, Cumbria. And it does, as you probably know, rain more in Cumbria than it does in Nottinghamshire, so on a general basis. But basically, absolutely fantastic, the progress you're making. I was a staunch Remainer in Brexit, recognise we've left, I recognise we've got to get on, recognise we've got to be in charge of it, and Defra now, in this country, has an opportunity to do what it needs to do for sustainable agriculture. What you're delivering here, I believe, is going to be incredibly important. The progress you've made in last year, the SFI, is incredibly important. The train is coming down the track on food security. It's a pet thing of mine for 20 years and I won't even go there. But what you're doing now, the point that Tom makes about could it be too complicated, what you're doing, don't worry about the complications, get it delivered. We've got to work with you to get it delivered. The low-lying land around the periphery of the country is 10% of productive land producing 16% of food. We've got to look after that land, like you said, and make sure we're delivering what you were wanting to deliver on it and work with you. One thing that you must look at getting into the landscape recovery is the water level management in those dikes and supporting farmers to maintain and clean out those dikes. We discussed this with Janet Hughes when she was up last year. Janet really grasped it and recognised the need for it, and it is vital that you help those farmers to maintain their water level systems and clean those dikes,
Yeah.
look after the biodiversity in that there. So that is something that I just want you to take away,
Yeah.
and make sure you get involved into the SFI. Thank
Yeah.
you very much.
Thanks.
very
That's
much.
noted on that. Yeah, I think we can take that back. And we've added those 50 extra options. We think that fully covers the remit of what we think is necessary, but we're completely open-minded. Is there more that we can do? And we'll keep our eyes on that, but we'll pick up on that one. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Nick Palmer from Compassion World Farming. When we talk with farmers, we're often told that what's needed above all is predictability. And I want to ask, is there an established process for when you will announce new opportunities to apply for ELMS grants? From time to time, there'll be a political move to, let's say, I don't know, phase out fairing crates or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
Is there a kind of advance warning process so it doesn't
Yeah.
just pop up overnight?
So that's a very good question. And actually, so in the document, for those when you get the excitement, when you rush home and open up gov.uk and have a look at it, we actually do. So we completely recognise at the moment the way that for understandable reasons, we've made policy in different announcements at different times in different ways. And we've made those changes because we've had multiple different schemes that are operating around each other. It means that we need to respond to those different application windows. The document sets out two things, all of which are about to provide more predictability for farmers, because we'll be in a position from this summer where CS and SFI are kind of fully integrated as a single application process. We've added in all the extra options. We will have a stable offer. There's an election, but let's ignore that. We have a stable offer. And our plan is that we'll keep that under review. And what the document sets out is every year we'll look at that scope of that offer, the way we're delivering it, the prices we've got, stuff like the premiums that we're adding, the management payment, is that working? What needs to change? And we'll seek to have one change every year. And I don't want people to be like, oh, there's going to be a big change every year. There'll be a kind of tweaks every year, so we have to build a more regular cycle in. And what we've also said is, the thing we really want to avoid is having to do what I've just spent the last 5 years of my life doing again, which is redesigning agricultural policy from square one. It's exhausting. And also it's really confusing for farmers and really messy. So our plan is that over 3-year period, we will do an MOT, kind of health check of each of the options that we're delivering to work out, is this still working? Is it still providing value for money? Does it need to change? So that we keep the whole of the mechanism under constant review. Whereas the CAP model was, the king is dead, long live the king. Every 3 years, 7 years it would turn on and turn off again. And our model to date has been quite slow and incremental. We want to move to a system where we've got the stable offer, we keep it under review. Every year we describe the changes that we're making as the plan. So I completely recognise that point around more predictability for farmers.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Thank you. Joe Evans, the Vice President of the CLA, and I'm a farmer from Herefordshire. It must be a bit disconcerting to be in a room and having lots of people telling you what a great job you're doing. It's not
happening very often. There's a hammer coming. It doesn't happen very often.
There isn't a butt coming, actually. CLA has been hugely supportive,
Indeed,
and we're very
appreciated
excited at a number of the options that are coming up.
Yeah.
Here's my butt.
Yeah.
Farmers, our members, are facing, I suspect, a very challenging year this year. Weather, interest rates, pick your battle. The decline in BPS is happening exactly on target, exactly as was promised. And I emphasise again that we're very supportive of the direction of travel, and we think that ELMS is the future. How do you reconcile the fact that the pace of rollout and the ability to farmers to actually get their hands on cash? SFI 23 opened in September, October of 23. We're not quite sure when the money will hit the bank accounts of our members for SFI 24. There is an underspend of the budget. How do you reconcile getting the cash from the government's bank account into our farmers' bank accounts?
Yeah, so there's a few things that I would perhaps seek to highlight, I guess, from our perspective. So one is that there isn't an underspend, in that announced the report yesterday around, I won't speak too precisely, but rather the way that we allocate the budget is that we have flexibility. So where we did see some underspend in previous years, that funding is still available. So that total funding is still available. The Minister's been very clear about that. So we brought that funding forward with agreement with Treasury. And that's one of the reasons why we're able to apply a price increase to everyone with an existing agreement. We're able to offer 50 new options. We're able to offer these premiums because we're making full utilisation of that budget. I also don't fully accept the premise that there has been a delay in the rollout. So in terms of, or rather the delays that have been fairly small. The actual ambition, the SFI offer, as I touched on at the moment, we've now got 26 offers available. We opened that further. The plan, I think, at one point had been kind of open that to 6 or maybe 9. And the same for landscape recovery, we've done more projects. The same for our grants. Where we've seen farmer demand, we've responded and we've done more. However, the point I do completely take is that it's a difficult year and what can farmers access at the moment. So any farmer, and I said 1 in 10 of them have already done it, can apply for SFI at the moment. And some of them will get their payment, well, all of them will get their payments within 3 months. Those farmers who applied in September or October or November would get their first payment within 1 month. So that quarterly cash flow is definitely working. We're seeing that come through. We've increased the prices and we've expanded the offer. So I think that's the main way. SFI is there for farmers to apply for and to get stuck into. We've also got the grants, which are there as well. But I take the point that it is a challenging year. I think the way that we're looking at that is we're making sure that our schemes are simple, as flexible as possible, so that farmers are going, well, I'm feeling challenged, but I can't be asked to apply for SFI because it's really hard work. It's not going to work for my farm business. We want to remove that barrier so they can actually easily apply for SFI with this expanded set of offers and make full use of it. And then from the summer, we're hoping to get our expanded offer out as soon as possible. We're making sure that farmers who, say, apply for SFI and get an agreement in March, when our offer opens, the expanded offer opens in the summer, they'll be able to apply for those actions as well. They have to get a separate agreement to sit alongside their other agreement so they can benefit from those as well. Because what we don't want is farmers going, I'd love to be an SFI, but Jonathan gave me this great presentation about these 50 extra things that they're adding. They sound great, so I'm going to sit around for 3 months and do nothing. No, apply for SFI now, then we expand the offer in the summer, you'll be able to access that as well. So that's, I think, is the way we're going to manage it.
Thanks, Jonathan. Next one here is the lady in the corner there.
Yes, hello. My name is Gia Aradottir. I'm a consultant in the innovation space. My ears picked up when you started talking about those innovation grants that are coming online. Will those be available for novel food production? And I'm specifically thinking about insect farmers that I know are innovating and need more innovation on their farms.
So we do have funding. I think there is Defra funding around, as you say, innovative proteins. It doesn't come from the farming budget, so I think it's managed separately through our central kind of research and development. But our chief scientific advisor, I think Gideon, is very keen on that. So I think there was a round last year which specifically looked at that. I don't know if there are plans to do further ones because it's not managed from the pot of funding that we're responsible for. But we're aware of it. I mean, there's some great innovations, I think some of you will have heard about today in that sector, which Defra is keeping a very open eye on, but it's delivered somewhere else separate to the farming programme. But yes, they'll be there. The innovation programmes that we are delivering are more around productivity and kind of practical problems on a farm gate, how we can increase productivity, better use of innovation, precision farming. It's in that space, the R&D grants that will be available directly to farmers.
So a couple of quick questions. Julie Robinson, lawyer, but nerdy questions. First, so we're going to be SBI based in the new scheme. That's carrying on through, so it'll be SBI based. In terms of the Rural Land Register, will people be able to keep the Rural Land Register updated as they make changes to their farms?
Yeah.
Or does it become out? I mean, I just see it becoming out of date for farms that don't enter SFI or another environmental scheme.
Yeah.
And the second question, very quick, will new SBIs, i.e. new entrants who didn't claim BPS and qualify in 2023, be able to be caught up in the scheme from 2024 and be able to apply?
Yeah, so I'll answer the easier question first, but look, we've got Sandy here from the RPA. So the easier question for me to answer is that we confirmed today that we'll be opening up SFI to those who don't have BPS around when we expand the offer. We've attached SFI to BPS because it's made it easier and quicker for us to administer because we can use existing mapping information as far as possible. But we will be expanding that because we completely recognise the point around new entrants. Of course we want them to access SFI. At the moment they can't, which is an issue we need to fix. Sandy, do you want to introduce yourself? And then the point around RLRs and I guess how the fact that the system won't be kept up to date through the regular rhythm of BPS in the way that it currently does.
Right, my name's Sandy Capilla. I am Head of External Affairs at the Royal Payments Agency. I have a lot of interactions with farmers, which is always helpful. The mapping bit is an interesting one. So you're right. So the traditional cycle has been up until runners of the BPS will get our data updated. There is an element of we want to introduce processes, and we've just introduced an online way of making things simpler to tell us about those changes. And I think that's a step in the right direction. The next challenge is that how can we use the intelligence that we've got to try and simplify that change in the way that works. That stuff in terms of that requirement is still being worked through at the moment in terms of what are the opportunities that we can use to simplify the process. The key thing, and Jonathan and Jim have talked about it, that change around increased dialogue is really, really important in terms of that change. So how we maintain the accuracy of that data is still things that we're under consideration at the moment, but we want to make it more straightforward than it's been before, because I know mapping comes up quite a bit when I'm out and about.
Thanks, Sandy, for stepping in with that one. One last question from the gentleman in front of you, Sandy. It's time to wrap up then.
Yeah, so I guess back to the productivity point, we know there's the Innovate grants, but the big thing we're discussing this morning is adoption of that on farms and how that does, and even the software that Jim was showing up there. When you look at your productivity grants that you're doing, in livestock especially, it's still around the hardware, and it hasn't expanded to software, and actually that's what drives a lot of this ease of use, ease of grants. You know, I know guys who get the hardware and then they have an Excel spreadsheet of their cattle that sits on their computer for 10 years. That's no good to people for productivity. Like, are you going to expand that to some of these other innovations? And then it also links into how you update those systems in future, like tax going digital. Like, it feels like there's a missed opportunity there at the moment.
So I think is a very good idea, not one that I'd considered before. I don't know, the team who lead on grants might give me a different answer, but I don't think we've looked at software kind of management capability to tools, but I think it's a really good idea and one we can take back. So I think it's a good point. I mean, Jim made the point, we all talk like all farmers are flashing up those sorts of things that Jim showed. We know that's not the case, or we know from talking to farmers that maybe they use it, but they don't quite, have got the skills or the training to do it, not because they're not skilled professionals, but because it's a new technology, and with any new technology we need support to help it take it forward. So I think it's a really good idea. I don't know what the answer is, but I'll definitely have to take it back to the team and think about it, because I can completely see how that could really help. And as I said at the beginning, we're trying to remove barriers to farmers engaging in our schemes. And if that sounds like it could plausibly be a barrier, I think we're up for fixing it. So thank you for the idea.
Real quickly, is there any change to sub-5 hectare eligibility for SFI?
Sandy, do you know on that one? So we are looking to expand the eligibility. I don't think we've made a decision yet on the 5 hectare. As a discussion as part of the rollout this summer, we're going to sit down and work out with ministers. I think we recognise we want to get as many farmers in the scheme as possible. The challenge is always just around how do you balance that in reality. But yeah, it's a fair point. Again, that's one that we will address ahead of opening up the offer this summer. Thank you for the question.
Thank you very much for the questions. I'm just going to hand over to Richard, and thank you, Jonathan, from me. Thank you.
Okay. So just to wrap up, everybody, thank you very much indeed for your time. Today's theme and tomorrow's theme is about diversity, where we've talked about biodiversity, which is an obvious one, but obviously a very keen fit to business diversity as well, and making sure that all of us growers in the room and the supporting industries are profitable, because if we're not profitable, we're all in a bit of a muddle. A massive thank you, Jonathan, and your colleagues for asking us and the Frontier team to be involved with this today. We live and breathe it as a team across England and the UK, and it's great with Sandy in the room as well to see that unification with Defra team and RPA team. And from our own position, it's great to have the positive comments that we've had in this room. And it was a very apt comment that for once you weren't being shouted at, which is refreshing for us all.
I appreciate the change of pace.
But really important messages, just to reiterate from Jonathan and Jim, is that from the advisors in this room, please leave the room in a positive state to encourage our growers to embrace and get stuck in. And to utilise the simplification of this SFI platform. The team have listened relentlessly to feedback from us as advisors collectively in the industry. It's coming back from growers, and it's simple actions and aims. And let's keep it straightforward. And from a farming sort of perspective, please take it out wherever you can. And advisors, let's help support our growers to deliver this and roll this out. It's a tricky year, but what a fabulous opportunity to take it forward. So thank you all for your time. Thank you again to Jonathan for your support today. And on behalf of Frontier Agriculture, really very pleased to welcome you here this afternoon.